Skinwalker. The Spanish word brujo means, in English, medicine man, curer, witch, sorcerer. It connotes essentially a person who has extraordinary, and usually evil, powers. I am part Native American, and after I graduated from university, I was employed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and my first assignment post was located in Tuba City, Arizona, in the western Navajo territory. The Navajo refer to themselves as the Dene, meaning the people. I beg pardon ahead of time, from any Dene watching this video, for my use of the more recognized name of Navajo. Western culture teaches that witches are part of myth and legend, or that witches are eccentric people who dabble in the dark arts like it is a kind of game. However, most Native Americans that I have met still have a healthy respect for the supernatural, because I don't think modern education has been around long enough to totally suppress the activity of supernatural entities on native lands or in native minds. The Navajo that I met were very reticent to talk about witches, skinwalkers, to any outsiders, including me, because they figured nothing good would come from such talk, especially if it might draw a witch's attention towards them, or towards the people they love. If I happened to pick up a Navajo hitchhiker, whenever I brought up the subject of skinwalkers, they would quickly change the subject. As I have mentioned in a previous video, I had my own encounter with a demonic spirit and I knew it was a real experience. I also read the Carlos Castaneda book, The Teachings of Don Juan, a Yaqui way of knowledge, and I was interested in a Navajo perspective. If I could find somebody who would talk to me about it. Here are some excerpts from Carlos Castaneda's book. The friend who had introduced me to Don Juan explained later that the old man was not a native of Arizona, where we met, but was a Yaqui Indian from Sonora, Mexico. At first, I saw Don Juan simply as a rather peculiar man who knew a great deal about peyote and who spoke Spanish remarkably well. But the people with whom he lived believed that he had some sort of secret knowledge, that he was a brujo. I spent quite a bit of time driving out in the desert with Navajo co-workers. One co-worker told me he was a member of the Native American Church. I told him that I was a Pentecostal Christian, and we spent many hours talking about religion and our different beliefs. One day I brought up the subject of skinwalkers, and he told me frankly that Navajo do not like to discuss the subject. However, he did tell me that a skinwalker would never reveal themselves to anybody, not even to their closest family members. He told me that he had been told that their most defining characteristics were that they wanted to acquire wealth and power. Does that remind you of any politician you know? Of course, they can turn themselves into an animal when it is required. Also, bad things tended to happen to people around them, especially people who make them angry. That is why Navajo rarely, if ever, talk about the subject. His description of a skinwalker did seem to match a similar description in Carlos Castaneda's book. In describing his teacher, Don Juan used the word diablero. Later I learned that diablero is a term used only by the Sonoran Indians. It refers to an evil person who practices black sorcery and is capable of transforming himself into an animal, a bird, a dog, a coyote, or any other creature. One day I asked my coworker whether he had ever encountered a skinwalker, and he told me an interesting story. He told me that his father had built a hogan, a traditional Navajo home, out of stone. One time, when he was about 13 years old, his father left their home for a long period of time looking for work. One night, his mother and sister woke him up, and told him that there was something outside disturbing the horses. He said he picked up a rifle and went outside to investigate. He said it was so dark, he couldn't see anything, but he could definitely hear that the horses were being upset by something. He decided to fire a shot into the air, and if it was a predator of some kind, a shot from his rifle would drive it away. When he fired his rifle, he heard something like a horse galloping away, but then it stopped and hid behind their barn. He said that this peculiar action by the unknown intruder frightened him. He said if you scare a horse, it will run and keep running until it gets tired. A horse that is scared will not run and hide behind a barn. Therefore, he went back inside their hogan, and spent the rest of the night behind a locked door. I suspect that the first book written by Carlos Castaneda is probably a true account, at least it rings true to me. His subsequent books became progressively more outlandish, but he may have just delved deeper into the occult than I would ever want to go. Carlos specifically described two plants that were required to obtain an ally, Jimson weed and a mushroom that he could not definitely identify. Don Juan used, separately and on different occasions, three hallucinogenic plants, peyote, Lophophora williamsii, Jimson weed, Datura and oxyacin, D-metalloweed, and a mushroom, possibly Psilocybe mexicana. This ally is necessary to enhance a man's life, guide his acts, and further his knowledge. In fact, an ally is the indispensable aid to knowing. In the specific context of his teachings, Don Juan related the use of datura anoxia and psilocybin mexicana to the acquisition of power, a power he called an ally. Ally, as a term of art used by Don Juan, and an ally bears a strong resemblance to a familiar spirit as mentioned in the Old Testament. Leviticus 20:27 A man also or woman that hath a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death, they shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them. I remember that my brother pointed out some Jimson weed while we were walking down an arroyo in the Sonora Desert. It is a bushy plant with a green, leafy appearance, it has small white flowers, and the leaves have a very strong peanut butter smell. Jimson weed is pretty common in the Southwest and many different native tribes have used it in sacred and occult ceremonies. Jimson weed is in the nightshade family, it is very poisonous, and it definitely has hallucinogenic properties. I suspect that there may be other unknown plants with properties known only to practitioners of the dark arts. I remember walking down a wash with a Navajo natural resource officer and he pointed out a plant that looked similar to a large thistle and said, "Don't touch that." I asked him why not. He spoke a Navajo word that I didn't understand. I said, "What does that mean?" He just smiled and said, "Bad medicine." I took inventory of it, and avoided it after that. According to Carlos Castaneda, acquiring an ally was the secret to becoming a man of knowledge. In Don Juan's system of beliefs, the acquisition of an ally meant exclusively the exploration of the states of non-ordinary reality he produced in me through the use of hallucinogenic plants. An ally, he said, is a power a man can bring into his life to help him, advise him, and give him the strength necessary to perform acts, whether big or small, right or wrong. This ally is necessary to enhance a man's life, guide his acts, and further his knowledge. In fact, an ally is the indispensable aid to knowing. I truly believe that there are definite supernatural occult powers a person can acquire with the help of demonic spirits. In the book of Enoch, the Watchers took wives from among men and taught them the occult arts. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. I also believe these powers are only pale imitations, and poor counterfeits, of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. I am making this video because I believe so-called Western civilization has completely lost touch with the reality of our true identity as spiritual beings. It makes sense to me that demonic principalities, and their human servants, would attempt to conceal the reality of spiritual power, in order to enslave us to their own hidden agenda. I also believe that our losing touch with the spiritual dimension was and is a purposeful, direct attack on our health, our happiness, and our freedom by witches and sorcerers in high places, people who are possessed, and controlled by demonic spirits. The witches have completely taken over control of all human organizations on earth including governments, corporations, and religious institutions. Matthew 7:15 Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. Matthew 7:16 By their fruits you will know them. If you want to escape the demonic worldwide government, Babylon, keep watching my videos, and please like and subscribe. Have a great week. Thanks.